What is your reason for being? According to the Japanese, everyone has an ikigai, what a French philosopher might call a raison d'être, or purpose in English. Some people have found their ikigai, while others are still looking, though they carry it within them. Our ikigai is hidden deep inside each of us, and finding it requires a patient search. According to those born on Okinawa, the island with the most centenarians in the world, our ikigai is the reason we get up in the morning. Ikigai is principled on 4 elements: what you love, which is your passion; what you are good at, your skill set; what you can be paid for, to earn a living; and lastly, what the world needs. It sounds like the basis of effective entrepreneurship. Ikigai, the Japanese secret to a long and happy life, is an international bestseller book authored by Hector Garcia and Frances Miraches. Magna Carta Wines is an organic wine-growing winery established in 2014. Mphumeleli Ndlangisa farms grapes and produces wine naturally without addition of chemicals. Mphumeleli says his wines are anecdotes of African culture and history. Magna Carta Winery is owned by Mphumeleli and his wife Nomfundo Ndlangisa. Their aim is to grow exports of their wines into more countries in Europe, Asia, and Africa. They are currently exporting 70% of their wines, and their aim is to grow that number to 80% this year. Magna Carta Wines' mission is to organically grow and export proudly South African wines. They are farmers that want to change the way the world views South African wines, especially those farmed by Black Africans. Magna Carta Winery is a family enterprise that wants to grow into international markets whilst creating jobs in South Africa. They are passionate about agriculture and love being wine producers. All of their goals are long-term. They work for the next generation, who they hope will follow in their footsteps in organic farming. Hi, Mphumeleli. Thank you. Thank you for coming to the Merge podcast to share your journey with us. How are you?
Thank you so much, Lifo. I'm good. And yeah, very happy. I hope you're the same.
I am. Absolutely. Thank you. So just to start, I know you used to be an investment banker before you delved into your journey of entrepreneurship, your journey of winemaking. Can you take us through that? How did that come about? How did you get here?
Oh, okay. How did I get into wine? All right. It's quite a curvy road, but I think it started with studying in Stellenbosch, where I did statistics and maths, and then after that, I got a job in finance and investments. And then I sort of wasn't happy in that career, even though the money was great. But my love of wine was always there, I think, even before Stellenbosch. As a student, I used to spend a lot of money just buying wines to taste and learn about different wine regions. But it was always in the background. And then when I left banking, I returned back to Stellenbosch to do my honors in statistics. And then, I think I started buying so much wine because I had the money to. And I became friends with a lot of winemakers. And then I was offered to actually make my first barrel in Stellenbosch. And then I think that's how I started making wine. And it was a Pinot Noir and a Chenin. And I never looked back from that. I think those wines sold out from that first barrel within about 2 months. And then I was like, okay, there's something here. And it's, it's something I'm really passionate about. And now I'm here.
Interesting. But typically, when you after you studying and you studied and you got this job, you're an investment banker. Now I mean, your family or your friends, you go back to say, especially your family, our parents, listen, I'm now going to be making wine. How was the reception of that?
I never even told them, to be honest.
Yeah.
My mom found out because we launched the wines, and then there happened to be a Sunday Times journalist at the launch party, and then she put it in the Sunday Times magazine, lifestyle magazine, that Sunday. We launched it on a Saturday, and then it was a Sunday Times the next day. Then my mom gives me a call, and she's like, "What's happening? I see that you're making wine." And I was like,
Yeah.
"Ugh, it's true." And then I asked her, I mean, like, what do you feel? What do you think? And then she said, no, I think it's a good idea.
Oh,
And yeah, and then I continued. So
yeah.
yeah,
Wow,
I
interesting.
was a bit nervous about that, yeah, but
Yeah.
it worked.
Wow. So, but at what point did you stop your traditional employment job completely, or were you doing both? On your spare time, going on your wine project, and on Mondays going back to work.
No, I stopped corporate completely. I mean, when I came back to
Wow.
study again was purely because I wanted to do some soul searching. And it
Mm-hmm.
hit me like it's great to learn and get more and more qualifications, but you're going to end up in corporate again. Is that what you want? So, and for me, I knew back then that's not what I wanted. So I was doing a lot of, introspection. And then eventually, I think wine found me,
Yeah.
during that time because I was looking at what my passions were. And I really
Mm-hmm.
like agriculture. I like nature. But I'm not satisfied with just selling potatoes and tomatoes and things like that.
Yeah.
It has to be a bit challenging, and I think wine is definitely that. It's very multi-dimensional, and it's changing every year, and it's new challenges every year for every region, and
Mm.
it's very dynamic. So yeah, I think it found me, and it really appeals to everything I was looking for in a career. So
Mm.
yeah.
Wow. Wow. And for me, your wine or your company, your winery, Magna Carta. Why that name?
Well, a lot of people don't know the Magna Carta is not just Jay-Z's album or whatever. It's actually
Yeah.
about a legal document from 1215 AD.
Mm,
And the document basically says they're doing away. It was in the feudal system in the British whatever
mm,
monarchy, and then they said we're going to do away with kings and queens. We're going to have people owning their land, farming their land, and what comes from their land is theirs. So what it basically meant was that people were going to have freedom that they were never going to have before.
mm-hmm,
And my philosophy is that wine should be free, I mean natural, no chemicals, um, no heavy machinery, just kept pure and in its primary state. And that's what Magna Carta Winery is about.
mm.
It's about freedom for the grapes and freedom for the wine.
Yeah, yeah.
Because
Wow.
what's happening now, you get a lot of wines which are, regarded as the best wines in the world. And then you look at the chemical composition, it's full of sulfur, it's full of, copper and
Mm,
different sort of additives which are not natural, which don't actually come from the vineyard or anything like that. So
mm-hmm,
I wanted to break away from that. I still believe in that philosophy quite heavily. So
mm, mm.
Magna Carta comes from that. Yeah,
Wow. Freedom of the grapes
exactly.
to do as they would do in a natural environment. So that means, in essence, the wine you're making is natural. Can I call it organic? Is it organic wine?
Yes, so organic just refers to how you grow the grapes.
Right.
But for it to be natural, it has to be organic first.
Uh-huh. Okay.
So organic is correct, but now what happens is people farm organically, and then when the wine or the grapes get to the cellar,
Hmm.
When they start making the wine, then they start putting chemicals in, which actually defeats the entire purpose
I
of
see.
farming organically, because now you're going to have chemicals in your wine eventually. So,
Hmm. Hmm.
mm,
Interesting. So now this natural winemaking, isn't it a road less traveled? Like you say that most of the wines that we consume have the sulfites and all those preservatives in them. So now your method, isn't it the more harder to do or costly or more expensive to maintain?
yes, yeah, it is. It's becoming popular, but I mean, we're talking about less than probably 5% or even less than that of the producers choose this way in the world.
Okay.
Because it's very high risk. That's why it's not so popular. Because if you're going to leave nature to do what it does,
Mm,
you can have an entire batch of wine being contaminated if you're not careful. Um, and a lot of people, because it's so capital intensive to make wine,
mm, yeah.
you could lose, you know, everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
The risk is quite high. So
Yeah.
you find that natural wine producers do very small batches,
Yeah.
like me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we're very happy to take the risk because the wine that you get eventually is of such a high standard, and it just comes from nature, which makes it even more wonderful. So
Yeah.
um, yeah, it's very natural wine producers. Yeah, they're few and far between. We're talking like maybe in South Africa we've got about three or four out of
Okay.
like
Wow.
1,200 producers, something
Yeah.
like that. Yeah. So
And
it's yeah,
interesting. Yes, when you say you could lose everything, I was going to say like, so at one point you can find yourself having got to discard a whole batch, because then it got contaminated or the naturalization process didn't work. So you would have to
yeah,
throw it all out.
yeah. And it doesn't happen often because
Okay.
wine is very resilient in itself. It's good at fighting off germs. So I mean, if you're just a responsible winemaker and you just look out for certain risks, you shouldn't have batches, becoming contaminated. But yeah,
Mm.
the risk is high. I suppose for bigger sort of wineries that are doing supermarket wines,
Yeah.
the conditions and what's stipulated by the supermarkets is quite strict. So they have to make the same wine every year to taste exactly the same. Whereas with natural wine, because nature dictates everything, every single year will be different because the conditions every year are different.
Yeah.
So we're making wines in a completely, for a different market, for a different environment. It's chalk and cheese, really.
Yeah.
And that's what happens. Like people who drink natural wine don't drink conventional wines.
Hmm.
And conventional wine people don't drink natural wine.
Hmm.
It's a different world.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's two different worlds.
Exactly, yeah.
What is your typical work day like at your wine farm? Do you grow your own you grow and maintain your own vineyard or grapes from scratch?
Yeah. So currently it's just myself, my wife, and then just two contract laborers. And
Mm-hmm.
we are farming our own vines, and we do everything ourselves, including designing the labels and everything. So we try
Yeah,
to keep everything in house.
yeah.
And the vines are quite young. We only planted this year, but before we used to just buy the grapes from different grape growers, and
I
we're
see.
trying to move as far away from that as possible because then we can dictate, the quality of our own wines, and we sort of have a more intimate relationship with the vines, so we can understand what's happening and how far we can push the vineyards to get a certain quality. And that is basically the reason why we planted, so we can understand our wines from grassroots level all the way to the bottle instead of just getting grapes in and then making the wine. which is
Mm.
great also. But you miss that whole farming side, and I'm definitely more interested in that, in the viticultural side. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow. Okay. So apparently, or it's if it's a fact, you will let me know that the wine making industry is a difficult one to break into. That is more of a
Mm.
close knit community, more popular in the white community, more so than in the black community. How did you break into that industry yourself?
I would call it, similar to Prison Break or something like that. That's how difficult it is.
Is it?
Um, oh yeah, I don't even think I've broken into it. I mean, I don't get invited to South
Wow.
African wine shows, but I will be invited to international wine shows in Germany and in Asia and in America. So at the
Ah,
moment, it's like I'm making wine in my own little island. So I think one day I'll break into the South African wine market, but I'm
interesting.
not looking, I'm not holding my breath for it. But yeah, um, yeah. I mean, it's difficult, but I mean, if this is your passion, you'll stick it out, and that's why I'm still sticking it out. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
It's insanely difficult. Not just the cost of having a winery, but then now you try access the market that you're selling, that you have to sell the wine to, and then
Yes.
there's barriers there, and then now you want to export, and then there's more barriers, and now you want to exhibit at certain wine shows, and then there's barriers there. You want to be in restaurants. There's no, you can't be. It's like
Ah,
so.
okay.
It's insanely difficult. There's every single layer you go up. It's just. Yeah, it's the one industry I think that is probably the toughest at the moment.
Yeah. What
Um,
what a challenge. So it's not easy for you to be being here at home in South Africa to exhibit in the local wine shows. It's difficult for you.
oh yeah, yeah. I don't think I've ever even done a South African show, and it's almost 10 years.
Yeah.
So yeah, so it's quite. Oh, actually, I did. I've done Soweto Wine Fest. I was invited to that, and I did do that, but that
Okay.
was 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. And of course that now speaks to one of your biggest challenges you face as a winemaker. Are there any more challenges?
Yeah, I think the capital to have tanks, to have the machinery, and then next thing you need the land to grow the vines. And then you've got to have the capital to actually put work into the land and keep these vines alive, including irrigation, including your fertilizations and everything. Then you've got to know how to actually train the vines and then make the wine. It's yeah, I mean it's a big chunk to chew for someone who's doing it just as a business.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
why you see a lot of brands that people do as businesses. They start and then they eventually stop doing it because
Mm.
you just have to really put yourself into it wholly.
Uh,
Um,
yeah. I cannot imagine because for you, you are a winemaker, but you also started from scratch agriculturally.
exactly, yeah.
You grow these vines and you follow them, and then comes harvest and all of that. So I can't imagine it to be an easy job at all.
Yeah, I think the journey just started because now with our own vines here, we have to be here most of the time because the climate we have on our farm is quite extreme. There's a lot of heat waves. There's no water,
Mm,
so it's not a fragile. I mean, the vines are fragile, but it's not a sort of easy climate. So,
yeah.
um, and you find a lot of people are very happy, especially the black people in the industry, to just buy unlabeled wines from white producers and then just put the labels on because then you don't have to do any of the farming
Oh yeah.
or the making. You just sell and then you get your profit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Then you have no sort of control on your quality or your price in the future. If your brand becomes big, whoever you're buying from can just stop selling to you
Yeah.
or give you wines they're not happy with themselves. There's just many variables if you're doing that, but it is the easier route to go if you just want to be in the wine industry,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh. Interesting. And you are the outlier. Now,
Yeah, but I hope there can be more
yeah,
crazy
yeah.
people like me.
Someone actually told me that I had on this show that um, entrepreneurs or entrepreneurship, that real passion is actually living in the crazy, crazy world in quotes. Type of you follow your passion and you just go for it.
Exactly, yeah, that's exactly true. Yeah, it is. It feels like that some days you're like, why am I doing this
Yeah,
to myself?
yeah,
I can just go back to corporate, or I can just do something easier just to
it,
survive. But it's life is like, life is it only goes one direction, and you're running out of time. So
yeah, yeah.
yeah, so I prefer to do this, even though it's very difficult sometimes, but it's always worthwhile.
It's always because it's a thing you're passionate about. It's a thing that makes you jump out of bed in the morning, without
Exactly.
feeling like it's hard work. Like, you don't drag your feet when you go when you go to work because you love it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's true.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Needless to say, a bulk of your produce is for the export market, Mpumi. So which countries are those, and how did you form those business relationships?
The business relationships were formed just through traveling. I mean, importers are people who are quite risk averse, because how the import exports work is that if someone wants your wines, they have to pay 100% upfront
Hmm.
before the wine even gets onto the ship, because once it's on the ship, you're not going to get it back. And so the relationship starts many years before you get your first order.
Hmm.
And you build that relationship by traveling to that country, and then maybe they might come see you, and then you build trust that way. But how I've found importers was purely just through Instagram. Um, I believe a lot in having my wines listed in restaurants where importers go. So I would even sponsor wines to restaurants just so it's on the wine list.
Hmm.
And then, sometimes a big importer or wine lover would taste this wine and share it. And then, it's becoming something that is well known. And then people are asking about it. And then eventually the importer will be like, there's this wine that's Magna Carta that people are talking about. So let me import this into the country.
Hmm.
But eventually, I mean, to get an importer is luck. I mean, it's a lot of variables. Firstly, your wine has to be good
Hmm.
or good enough. It has to work for the market in their country. Um, because you're competing with so many producers, not just in South Africa,
Yeah.
Spain, Chile, everyone who's sort of seen as the new world of wine, um, and in a similar price range. And yeah, so I mean, that's thousands, tens of thousands of producers. So it's luck, and it's like, it's just a match made in heaven, one of those things. When you
Yeah.
get an importer, you're very, very lucky to get that. A lot of producers don't have that.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
But yeah.
And which countries are those?
America, South Korea, Sweden, the UK, um, Copenhagen. What's that? Is that Denmark?
Denmark. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, Denmark. I'm forgetting two other countries. And then Swaziland locally, and then Zimbabwe.
Okay.
Um, but a lot of Europe, most of Europe, Asia. I think those two are the biggest markets,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
America.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow. Wow. Interesting. And now I've also heard that I think you mentioned it earlier as well, that you design the labels that go on your bottles.
that's probably my favorite part. Yeah.
Is it? Okay. Is it an
Because
artist
what
or you
happens
just,
when you're making,
yeah.
yeah, when you're making the wine, you've got the whole story of what happened that year, that season. Now it's in bottle, so you've got the
Mhm.
whole story in your head already
Yeah.
of what you want to do, tell the story about how this wine came to be.
Yeah.
So I really liked doing the labels myself because
Yeah.
I've got the full knowledge of this wine, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
I can
Yeah.
share that on
Yeah.
the label.
Oh, nice. Do you write a little descriptive, at the back, on the label at the back, or of the journey of this
I
wine?
used to actually have like paragraphs of text. People don't
Yeah.
read. They don't read that stuff.
Is it?
Um,
Okay.
yeah, so I do like 5 sentences nowadays, and that's it.
Yeah.
But people who are really interested will send you a message or an email to be like,
Mm.
"Love your wine. I want to know more," and
Mm-hmm.
then you can tell them the full story.
Wow.
Um, but yeah, the text on labels nowadays doesn't really work.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Very few people read that. Yeah,
Very few people. We just want to open the bottle, the bottle and drink the wine.
exactly. Yeah,
Wow. And do
yeah.
you have any investors into this process, Pubi? Or you're all on your own?
Yeah, I did. I think when I first started, I tried to bring some friends on board, and it just never worked out because they were based in Joburg, and all the work is done in the Western Cape. So
Okay.
no investors, but I think yeah, definitely looking for investors now because the farming side is very very intense with capital. So
Mm.
um, definitely looking for investors, but currently it's just my wife and I,
Yeah.
and yeah, we fund everything ourselves. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, you know when that's interesting. When you watch the movies, the old winemaking methods, in Italy or somewhere,
Mm,
you see them stepping on the grapes, to take the juice
yes.
out. Is that how you do it? I have to ask.
Yeah, that's the best. The best wines are made that way.
Ah, okay, yeah,
Yeah, because you get a feel. I mean, it's all about making wine is very intimate. It's similar to how we make um, traditional beer in Africa.
yeah, yes,
It's something that you feel more than There's a science behind it, obviously, but
mm,
that's
mm,
for people making big volumes. But a lot of good winemakers that are making natural wine,
yeah,
mostly natural wine, is made that way. The best natural wines are made that way.
hmm,
It's about getting a feel for your grapes and your land and your wine, because the wines that the people are stepping on, the grapes, they never even add yeast. They just step on them, and then naturally yeast will form, and then
uh-huh,
turn that grape juice into wine.
uh-huh, okay.
So, and you're not even when the wine is bottled, it's taken from the juice that was stepped on
Mm-hmm.
and bottled, and then that's it. That's the final product. So yes, that is how you make it. Yeah.
There
But you can
isn't.
use machinery. We use machinery. Yeah. I
Yes.
mean, otherwise it'll take us too long.
Oh yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so we do have machinery as well, but I still like to do the trampling and,
Yeah.
you know, the pressing and everything. So yeah.
Wow. Interesting. And which wines do you make? And a Magna Carta. Which types of wines do you produce?
I like Chenin, Blanc and Pinotage. I like working with those two, but I make sure like almost 12 wines.
Okay.
And I change. I mean, some years I won't want to make a specific wine because maybe the grapes were not good enough for that year.
Mm-hmm.
But every year I will make Chenin and I will make Pinotage and I will make Pinot Noir
Okay.
and I like Chardonnay as well and Muscat, which is called Hanepoort. I
Mm-hmm.
like working with that as well. But I make bubbly, I make still wines, everything because I feel like the more wine I make, the more I know, and I can find a style eventually in a few years where I can be like, this is the style I want to make forever.
Mm-hmm.
And at the moment, I'm making as much wine as I can. I even
Yeah.
make white wine from red grapes, like the white Merlot.
Wow.
I'm making a style of called orange wine, which means leaving the white grapes on the skins, and then the wine turns orange, so it's not white.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there's so many different styles of wine you can make, and I try and make as much as I can because it's part of my journey, and I like that.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Okay. And to some of our listeners who would like to have an access to your wines locally, where can we find them?
Okay. Yeah. So currently we're shipping a lot of the wines from directly from the farm.
Mhm.
I had a distributor in Joburg, but not anymore. But I will get back on that train. I think what's happened is that with the farming side, we've sort of slipped on trying to get the wines to market, which is not the
Mm.
smartest thing to do if you need capital. But yeah, so they can order directly from Instagram or send an email,
Ah, okay.
and we ship directly from the farm. In Cape Town, we do have outlets that stock our wines, wine shops, and liquor stores and that. Joburg, not so much. Durban, not so much. And Eastern Cape, literally nothing. So it's always better to just order it directly from the farm. It's cheaper anyway that way.
Hmm. Okay.
And then we courier the wines. Yeah.
Hmm. Okay. So, is there any advice you can share for someone who would like to be a winemaker? What course are there any good courses they can embark on, or is the learning experiential?
Yeah. I mean, nowadays you can do a 3-month course with Stellenbosch, the Garage East winemaking course. And that's about 3 months. And it's good. It's a good course. Yeah, the experiential is where the real learning is because what they won't teach you how to deal with certain scenarios on these courses,
Hmm.
and those happen just during practice. Like let's say maybe a contamination happens, and then you have to find out what to do, and then the courses just teach you how to turn sugar, grape juice into alcohol, and what machinery to use and what to look out for. So
Hmm.
the learning is there. I mean, the basic knowledge you can do a course for, and you don't really need to have nothing more than a matric. I think
Hmm.
for anyone who wanted to do that. But to become a good winemaker it takes time and passion and patience, and it's important to have a mentor as well because they can help you get there faster.
Hmm.
I didn't. I mean, I had someone sort of help me, but it wasn't really intentional. It was more just me buying their wine in exchange for advice.
Ah,
That's how
okay.
difficult it is to get knowledge
Yeah,
sharing in the industry.
yeah,
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I think if anyone wants to get in, they must know that the journey is quite difficult, and the wine industry as a consumer is very nice. It's very nice to drink wine and
yeah.
be invited to the wine launches, which is not very nice. But if you want to be on the production side of wine,
Mm.
it's a very untransformed side of wine where it's linked to the land, and we all know what
Yeah,
that means. So
the dynamics. Yeah.
yeah, it's better to be a consumer, I think.
it's better to be me.
Yeah, it's better to just enjoy the wines. Yeah.
Wow, that is so interesting. Now, do you have a mentor now? They might not be local mentors, but do you have one where like bounce off ideas and stuff like that?
Um, Yeah, I think so. No, not really. You know what happens at end of the day, wine producers are in competition with each other. So it's like the art business.
Ah, okay.
Artists can be friends with each other, but they're not gonna, tell you how to make their art or how they make their art. And it's pretty much the same in the wine industry because end of the day, I mean, we're all in the same industry competing.
Mm, mm,
So Yeah, I've got friends in the wine industry, but I mean, in terms when it comes to sharing of knowledge, that's where it sort of stops.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, you learn through your own mistakes, and some mistakes are more expensive than others. But
Mm.
yeah, but I mean, to have a mentor, I mean, it's very different. I think in France
Mm-hmm.
and in Italy, where the older generation is always trying to help the younger generation, because at the end of the day, it's the country's brand. It's the brand of
Mm.
France that the world
Yeah.
looks onto.
Yeah.
Where that's the old way, I think, the old world of wine thinking. Whereas in the new world being Australia, South Africa, Chile, Southern Hemisphere mostly. And in the new world, I think it's very competitive because everyone is just in a rush to go to market, whereas they're not thinking about the greater brand, like brand South
Mm-hmm.
Africa, brand
Ah.
Australia. And, you find a lot of competition within the country instead of the country working as a whole to compete with the rest of the world. And that's where the French have done a very good job, and Italy, because those are the most expensive and most iconic wines.
Mm-hmm.
But it takes time. So us in the new world, we still have to get there, and we still have to define what South African Pinotage means. What is the standard? What's the standard for Chenin Blanc in South Africa? And we're getting there, but it's taking longer because people aren't working together, I think. But yeah.
Hmm. For me, thank you. And in closing, is there any book that you read that has been pivotal in your journey of entrepreneurship or your journey of life in general?
Yeah, I was thinking about that question.
Mm.
Look, I read books as I go. Right now, I'm reading a lot of books on how to develop vineyards and how to
Mhm.
develop a farm and what works. Because you think about plants speaking to each other, so you've got to plant things that what do you call this? They have a symbiotic relationship. So at the
Mhm.
moment, I'm reading this book about the foundation of Harlan Estate, and that's in Harlan was built on basically a forest. They went to a forest in the 1980s, and they started building a wine estate. It's something that was quite extreme because you're dealing with trees and soil that's not ready. So I think that book at the moment is really quite gripping for me on how you can build your dream in the most extreme conditions, which we also find ourselves in here, because it's
Mhm.
basically a desert where we are.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, so the book's called I think Foundations of Harlan Estate,
Mhm.
and yeah, it's quite a scarce book, I must say. It's because it's
Yeah.
it's it's published in America and it's sold in America.
Ah, okay.
I only got it because the I think the owners of Eagle's Nest in Constantia, who recently sold their farm, eventually also sold their book collection, and then I happened to find it as a secondhand book, I
Ah,
think
okay.
earlier this year, and then yeah, and then now I have it, and it's a wonderful book. It's
Wow.
yeah, it's
Wow.
quite inspiring. Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. I'll make it a point to check it out. And for me, thank you for sharing your journey with us. I'm sitting here thinking I could go on forever listening to your story because it's very inspiring. You know, as you
thanks
talk,
to
it
Paul.
makes
Yeah,
you think deep to see am I am I in alignment with with my journey or what I'm meant to be doing? Am I in alignment with my passion? Really, this is quite inspiring, and I've learned a lot about the world of wine. And thank you so much, and we wish you nothing but the best in your journey.
thank you so much, Defoe. Yeah, and thank you for this. I really get to think about my own journey. I think that's what these questions of yours have made me think about. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah.
Thanks for listening to our show this week. If you enjoy our show and would like to support us, help us by spreading the word. Tell your friends about Mej and engage on social media. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Our handle is @Mej Podcast. Mej, My Entrepreneurship Journey on LinkedIn. If you would like to engage with us privately, drop us an email at defoe@mejpodcast.com. Remember, we are available and streaming wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Mphumeleli Ndlangisa, and you've been listening to My Entrepreneurship Journey.